Catflap Chats. We are back once again, episode 64. I'm delighted. I'm actually excited about this one because it's a subject I don't know loads about, but I know who you are and I watch it every Olympics. Probably the same as most people. But I've got GB Olympic swimmer, double silver Olympic medalist, Commonwealth, European record holder, and now podcaster, business owner, mentor, coach, probably a load of stuff I've missed out. Miss Jazz Carlin, thank you so much for coming on. I hope I did you justice there.
Oh, no, thank you. It's nice. I mean, it's always weird when someone's like telling you the things that you've done, you know, sometimes, oh yeah, like you kind of forget. And also just in life, sometimes I just feel like there's so many different plates I'm like juggling, you know, all the time. But yeah, lots going on, but thanks for having me on. I'm really looking forward to it.
No, thank you. So what is life like? I know that, you know, you retired just, you know, less than a couple of years ago now, and you've started your own stuff and your own business, and you're working, like you said, a load of different plates spinning. What's the last sort of year been like for you in what would have been a new world for you anyway, but then with everything else that's been going on?
I mean, it's not been great. Like the past year, I'm a very positive person, and like I do try and always see like the positive and the light in most situations, but the past year has been very tough, you know, at times. It's just been one of those times. I was working on like starting my online like coaching platform and business, and it was ready in like February, March time last year. And launching a new business at the start of a global pandemic maybe isn't the best timing or something that I would ever choose to do. But you know what, like it's just one of those things, trying to ride it out. And it's weird because my work has always been so flexible, so different, you know, events, schools, going to Singapore for 6 weeks a year to work with like swimming programs and talks and things like that. And you know, when there's no events, a lot of my work is with travel and things, and not going away, being stuck at home. And a lot of my life, I do love exercise. I do love sport. And when sport and leisure facilities closing down, not being able to swim, not being able to go to the gym, like a lot of things I can't really do, like my normal life. But I think it's obviously made a lot of us like adapt to different situations. And again, like I do try and stay positive. Like, don't get me wrong, at times I'm literally so miserable and like really struggle with it. But I am trying to like find different ways, new ways. And I guess, as you said, like it is a new time as well, coming away from sport, and then like fairly fresh coming out of the sport, and then kind of a global pandemic. It's like, oh wow, like a lot of different things and different changes. But yeah, it's just been one of those times trying to adapt. And even like last weekend I did a virtual wine tasting on Zoom where you send little different things of wine. I mean, it's just something different to do, you know, anything to mix up the weekend. It's like each weekend, it's like what to do this weekend. Take away coffee and go for a walk. That is literally like every weekend I get excited and there's nothing to do.
I think I'm starting to get bored of walking. Like I live in like Heath and that, so you've got Heathrow, you can walk around the lake, which is brilliant. But how many times do I want to do that a week? Like, it's just like, now you've stopped training at that elite level operator. Are you as healthy, and do you train as much now, or is it a case of if you want? I say this right as I'm about to open a beer, so because I have a beer with every.
I would have cracked something open.
Go and get one if you want.
Okay. Am I as healthy? It depends how you define healthy, to be honest. Because even like as an elite athlete, would I describe myself as healthy? Like pushing myself to the limit, like you're on a very fine line of health and like illness, and injuries and all that kind of stuff. Whereas now, I guess I've probably got more of a life balance. When I first stopped, I'd had enough, you know, like it felt like a massive long holiday where I didn't want to exercise, wasn't in the mood for exercise. I had the kind of thought that I've been eating pretty well for most of my life and training, exercising, and it felt like I wanted to just eat. I wanted to drink like low. I was going out more, drinking. I was eating a lot, and I wasn't really exercising. I just didn't want to. I didn't want to even like look at a pool. I didn't swim for quite a while after. And it did take me quite a bit of time to get that balance. But then once I kind of started to get that feeling for exercise again, and the enjoyment started to come back, and I now exercise for that feeling of like how it makes me feel, you know. It's like exercise makes me feel great. And so I think now it's like completely turned. Instead of like exercise to push myself to really drive to be the best kind of athlete I could be, now it's like exercise makes me feel good, but in a completely different way. And so it's quite nice, but then I also have a life balance. It's not like worrying, oh, I need to get to bed early tonight because I've got to be up at 5 a.m. It's now like I can stay up and have a drink. I mean, there's not much to do in 2021 right now, but it's like I have that option to stay up, and I've not got that kind of stress and every day of like, oh, training this, striving to be the best. I can just have that more of that balance. So I am still fairly healthy, and I do enjoy eating well and exercising, but then I also enjoy like having a drink with my friends and like enjoying good food and all that kind of stuff without having that worry of, oh, I've got training tomorrow or all those kind of other things. So it's a bit of a balance, really.
You mentioned then a couple of times, you mentioned about stress, right? Would you say, and this is probably a bit deep early on, but would you say that you're happier now with the life balance that you've got, or were you happier then and you're striving to find that balance of happiness now after post-swimming and after you've retired from it?
Yeah, it's a difficult question now.
Because the stress must be unreal when you're at that elite hundredths of a second between first, second, third, win or lose, compared to now where it's kind of, I suppose you're almost like the normal 9 till 5 person running your own business. I know it's not 9 till 5, but the stresses that we would all understand, it's a bit more like that now.
It is very different. And yeah, I mean, what I would have said as an athlete of what makes me happy, it's again, like competing well, training well, and all those other things. Like, yeah, you've got other things away from the sport, but I guess now it's been stepping away from the sport and retiring from sport. It's like finding new things that make me happy. Does that make sense? So it's and always being defined as like a swimmer, or like people wanting to talk to you about swimming, like your training competitions and all that kind of stuff, being known as a swimmer. Whereas now it's like finding new ways of what does actually make me happy. And that actually took some time for me to think, what do I enjoy? What do I love doing? And what are my passions away from being in a pool or swimming or all those kinds of stuff? And it did take me some time to like find that balance and find those things that I love doing, that I enjoy, and passions, but being able to do it in a completely different way. And I think sometimes, like a lot of athletes, it's like you do get quite addicted to like the training, the competition, those highs that you get at competitions, you know. There's no feeling like it, and I just wish I could bottle it up forever, you know. So
you'd be the richest person in the world if you could bottle that feeling, let me tell you.
And like every time like you're having a bit of a tough day or a bit of a down day, you just can open it, and like it is true. But in reality, I'm never going to get those feelings that I used to get, the adrenaline, the highs that I used to get at a competition. But the feelings that I can get now, I can get in a completely different way, and can actually relax and enjoy myself a bit more. So it is like a real complete shift in mindset. And don't get me wrong, I do still have a bit of that addictive personality with like when I go on the bike and the watt bike and stuff, I get a bit like into it, you know, and I want to do the next one, and I'm training, and I'm like, I'm not actually training for anything. Why am I pushing myself so hard? But it is like drilled into you, I guess, like to always be pushing yourself, striving for more. And I've always found like I'm always training for something, you know. I've always been aiming for the next competition, the next race or whatever. Whereas in life, like I have found it useful. It's like trying to find things to train for. Like I cycled London to Paris and a few different things. But especially now during this time, it's like, well, it's like a never ending tunnel. You don't know when it's going to stop. So it's like, I have found it, especially the past few weeks, a lot tougher mentally, because not knowing like an end game, not knowing a goal, what there is next, is quite difficult to kind of shift your mindset to not knowing what's coming around the corner.
No, I completely get that. I had an email from my gym today say that they think they might be open end of February, and they've let us borrow some kit, which is great. And I borrowed a watt bike and then a barbell and some stuff. So it's kept me at least the same body fat. I'm not the smallest bloke anyway, but it's kept me on the straight and narrow. But getting onto the bike, I've built up to like 63k is the most I did in one go. Without that, I'd have just been sat in the house because there's no way I'm walking 20k or whatever for the same amount of time to pass the time. But it gives you a bit of, I suppose, clarity of mind and helps you reset the focus and that a bit. I'd like to, I know you just said people want to talk to you about the swimming and all that stuff. I'd like to, if possible, just learn a bit more, I suppose, about your backstory before swimming became a job and when it started out as a hobby and you growing up and kind of what you were into, I suppose, a bit more Jazz the person, not just Jazz the swimmer.
Yeah, it's quite hard because from an early age, from like 11 years old, I'd be doing 5:15 diving in the pool, those early mornings. So before school.
I used to be a lifeguard, and when I was, what's the age? Is it 60? You can do your NPLQ, I think it's called. Down in Plymouth, right? Is where I'm from. So down in Devon. And I used to go and do the early shift, just pass my test. I could drive, go and do the early shift at 17 or whatever. Mate, there's no way I could do 30, 40, 50, 60 lengths at 5 in.the morning. Not a chance.
It's crazy, really. So it's even looking back, it's like trying to remember, because even at school, like, I did feel a bit different, I'm turning up to school with wet hair, like stinking of chlorine, and everyone's like, why on earth would a girl choose to go swimming at 5:15 in the morning, turn up with wet hair? Like, people didn't really understand, and I guess that's been a part of my life for so long. But as a youngster, I used to just love sports, PE at school, I used to love it. And, like some people used to try and get out of PE or whereas like I saw a meme on Instagram the other day, actually, and it was like the keen ones in PE, and it was like those sprinting off and everyone trying to chase them. And it was like me, like I would always, like, I'd want to beat the boys in like the bleep test, cross country. Like, I used to just love it. And I feel like it's probably my dad, a big part in that, because he was always be like, I race you to the goalpost, like playing this for me, playing that. Always been like that competitive side, racing me and all kinds of things. But I just used to absolutely love it, and I enjoyed school. I wouldn't say I was like an A-star student, but fairly academic and enjoyed most of my studies. But again, like just the sports side of it was like always been a big part of my life. But yeah, just from a young age, I guess trying out loads of different sports, but swimming was the one that kind of stood out the most. But as a person, like fairly quiet, got on with it, worked quite hard, even from a young age, like trying to work hard with school. And I guess at that age, I had to have a lot of balance and organisation, because when you're swimming at 5 in.the morning, you're swimming again in the afternoon, you've got netball around it, you've got cross country, this. I had to be quite good with my time, like managing what time to give. And so there probably was like a time when I was like finishing my GCSEs, and like friends, everyone's like discovering a bit of like having a few drinks and things like that, where like it could have gone a completely different way, where I could have maybe gone down an avenue where that kind of way, where I wasn't really into sport as much anymore. But I moved away from home at 16 to train in Swansea. So I made that move, and I guess that kind of took me down the path where it was like, oh, I'm going to give swimming a go and see where it takes me. But yeah, that's kind of it in a bit of a nutshell, really.
Did you so when I was growing up, I played rugby and a bit of football, but like rugby, you've got to be dedicated, right? And you've got to train and all this stuff, but you don't have to do it at 5 in.the morning. You can do it at any time. And also you can get away still with, I suppose, being yourself and having a drink and doing some of the other things, where athletics and swimming and some other disciplines, I suppose you just can't get away with it because it is those millimeters between winning and losing. Like, when you look back now, do you not resent it? Because that's probably the wrong word I'm looking for here, but did you feel like you did miss out on any of that childhood, teen into early adult experience, or were you okay with that?
It's difficult because when I look back, I don't feel like I really missed out. And I had, like some of the nights out and things like that as a youngster, when you like can't wait to go out and you get to that age. But I feel like it was enough. I was never one
Yeah.
like craving it like all the time.
Okay.
And I did feel like I had a bit of it. But again, like it's just, I guess at the time being quite focused and driven on what you want to achieve. And as you said, it's such fine margins, and
Yeah.
there is definitely a balance, but yeah, it's a very tricky one to get. And I think I don't feel like I missed out on anything. And I used to love it, and a lot of my friends were at swimming, and even though it's quite an individual sport, you do feel like you're around all your teammates and like they are your friends too. So it's yeah, you still feel like you're getting that social side of it as well,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
What's the mindset like then? Because like I've never played at an elite level, but I've got lots of friends who do, and I can understand their mindsets. What's it like though as a kid? Because again, when you're playing, like played rugby growing up, decent level till I was maybe 16, 18. But it was a team sport. If I didn't play particularly well, like the team still won, we were okay. And I wasn't driven by those 1%ers, which were going to make me a professional, which is why I went down the social route instead. For you, like you were competing at an early age, and was it nationals and meets and getting through the different age grades and stuff. Like, where did that mindset come from? Was it something that you just felt you had in you, or I know you mentioned about your parents and your dad being competitive with you. Like, where did that come from? Because most 16-year-olds, especially when I was at school, they didn't have that. They were girls, boys, texting, drinking, like whatever it was,
Yeah. Well, I went to my first British Nationals for swimming when I was 11.
Yeah.
So you can imagine like 11 years old and you're racing like the best in your age group in the UK, which is crazy, really. And it's such a young, well, when I look back, I'm like, at 11, was I ready? I see 11-year-olds now and I'm like, oh, you're so young, and like racing, like standing on the blocks and like going up against like the best in your age around the UK. It is quite an intense environment at that age. But I definitely wasn't the best in my age group at a young age, which I think was a great thing for me because it actually spurred me on to just keep wanting to improve and keep getting better.
Yeah.
It was then maybe when I was 14 that I had like a kind of breakout year. But do I think it's been in me the whole time? It's an interesting one, actually, because I think my mum and dad are quite competitive, even when we play board games, I like step back and I'm like, you guys argue, you guys have an argument about these games and I'll just sit back, and like, I'm not competitive with board games anymore. But so I think maybe it is in me to a certain point. And then I guess from a young age, having like dad being quite competitive with me, racing me, always like race you to do this, race you to do that. It's probably got that in me as well. But I think I just pick my times maybe that I can be competitive at, and the things that maybe I'm stronger at. If I was doing something that I wasn't very good at, obviously you're not going to be as competitive with it maybe. But then it was only really, I guess, when you go to and move away at 16, and I was seeing all these senior athletes. I moved to a senior program, and you're kind of thinking, oh, all these people are older than me. They're the senior athlete and what they're doing. And I was learning everything, watching them, what they did, what they were eating. And you kind of think, oh, that's what they're doing just to try and be like on the GB teams and to be competing.
Yeah.
So I guess having people around you that are on that kind of thing too, from a young age, it kind of then thought, oh, I want to be around them. I want to be better. And I'm going to try and push myself. It just becomes normal that every day you're pushing yourself and you're like part of that kind of team culture where everyone's driving to try and make the GB teams. So it's a difficult one, but I think for that opportunity to move away from home at 16, move away from mum and dad, and to have that experience made me learn very quickly what it takes to try and just make those GB teams and to make it to that level, really.
And what's like, swimming overall, like when they go into a pool, like Cardiff International Pool now, you go down, you'll see a swimming club in there, length and all this stuff, right? What's it like? Because again, I only ever knew team sports, really. I was never one for athletics. I wasn't particularly fast, great or anything like that. But one of my exes, I say that as if I've got loads, but one of my exes was a Welsh gymnast. And she said, like, she's older now, but she said that it was cutthroat bitchy, like parents. The kids were doing it because their parents were pushing them into it. So what was swimming like? Was swimming a nice environment, even though it was competitive, and I can imagine it could be cutthroat with times and training and stuff like that? Was it a nice environment to be around still?
Yeah, it depends. I think growing up in a swimming club, I've got really good memories of it. And I think
Yeah,
I've got good memories because my mum and dad, like, even though I say my dad was quite competitive with like racing me to this, they never actually really pushed me to do like certain things, you know. It was
yeah,
I was the driving force behind, like, I used to love racing, I used to love the competitions. And
yeah,
of course, like, they supported me. Like, I'm not great in the mornings, and I never have been. I remember from a youngster, and obviously getting up at like 4:45 in the morning is not a time where, well, naturally I did not want to wake up. And so like every morning, like my
brutal.
dad would plonk on like a tray with like a bowl of cereal and like put it in front and put on the TV, and it would always be countdown at that time of the morning. So like every morning, but I don't think I would have got up if like my dad
Yeah,
hadn't have done that. So I guess like in some ways, well, he would definitely supported me because I wouldn't have got up on my own back at that age.
yeah.
Um, but I don't remember it being too cutthroat at, like, because I was in quite a small club,
Okay.
so I was quite protected. Where if I was maybe in a bigger club, there might have been more going on. But in sport, you do get like some parents, some families where it can be quite intense, and you've got to step back sometimes and think, look, is the swimmer or is the person, are they actually happy? You know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
For me now, stepping away as well, what's more important for me is giving kids that are growing up good positive like sporting experiences, no matter what sport, no matter what. I just want to give them a positive experience of it, because I
yeah,
feel like that's where you're most likely going to carry it on in like your adult life. So for me, it's about making it as fun, happy, and a great experience. Obviously, there has got to be hard work, because you've got to be able to teach people that you can't just get things handed to you on a plate. You do have to work for things to get the results in certain things, but making it as positive and great energy around sport so it can give positive experiences. I think that's just so important.
yeah.
I think I really believe in.
I love that. I completely agree with you there as well. Wait, how did the? Well, you were 16, you said, when you moved to Swansea. So you were born. Am I right? You were born in England.
Yeah, so I was born in Swindon,
Yeah.
but my family's Welsh. So my mum and, well, my mum's the only one that actually moved away, but all my family have like lived in Wales. So I actually had the choice when I was younger, and
I was going to ask.
yeah, because I'd spent like a lot of my childhood, like Christmases and seeing family in Wales, it kind of just felt like a really, it felt like the right decision to represent
Yeah,
Wales. I felt, obviously having a lot of, well, all my family that live in there, it just felt like the right decision. And obviously they did give, Swim Wales did give me the opportunity at 16 as well to move away. And I've got a lot to thank them for, actually, because they actually supported me in a huge way.
yeah.
But yeah, it was probably when I was like 13, maybe 12, 13, that it was like, you got to decide one way or the other.
See, that's early as well. Like you don't. It always baffles me. Like school, I suppose, is the closest analogy I can get to it. Where they're like, "What GCSEs do you want to do now? What do you want to be when you're older?" I'm like, "Mate, I'm 15. Like, what?
Yeah,
I'm trying to speak to this girl. Like, I don't know what job I want to do in 10 years'
yeah, it's
time." Like,
true. It's true. I think the only thing, it's like with swimming, the only competitions that are England, Scotland, Wales is Commonwealth Games,
yeah,
and the rest is GB. And so, like, it is a big decision, but for me, it felt like the right one. And like
yeah,
family, that's what they supported me with. Um, and also just the opportunities that Swim Wales had given me, well, along the years has been huge. And obviously, it's a smaller nation, but they're very proud of like this athletes, and I've received a lot of support, so it just felt like the right decision.
yeah.
And then living in Swansea for 7.5, 8 years as well, so
How do you find that?
no. I've got good memories, you know. I was very lucky, obviously, to be close to the beach and things like that.
Yeah, it's lush.
Town centre is not the best. I don't know whether it's improved since I've left.
Oh, negative Ghost Rider.
And I did actually live in Cardiff for about 6 months or so.
Yeah,
Got a lot of family friends that live like Swansea, Cardiff, and like all South Wales way. So
Yeah.
It does feel like home, and it does feel like, yeah, definitely. Well, the decision at that age, obviously, it is a big one, but it felt like the right
Yeah.
one at that time.
Well, it's all worked out now when you look back. So I think you've done all right, to be honest, pal. Well, am I right in saying then you moved to Swansea and it was in like a year or two later you were international debut? I think I've got it down as 2005, so you're 15, 16 then. Like,
Yeah. So I actually went to Commonwealth Games when I was 15 for Wales. And then I
that's
moved.
mental as well. Like, you just don't, when I think of Commonwealth, like athletes at that elite level, you don't think of 15, do you? You think
Yeah.
they're older.
It was like I was nowhere near, great. I think I just made a final in one event, which is the top 8.
Yeah.
But yeah, like at 15, getting 2 months away from home, 2 months in Australia, missing all
Yeah.
schoolwork. It's like, get in. Like, I get to go away and like miss loads of school. And wow, it was meant
Yeah.
to be doing it online. Um,
Melbourne's a great city as well. It's so
yeah.
cool.
So we did 5 weeks in the Gold, 5 or 6 weeks in the Gold Coast, then two solid
Class.
weeks in Melbourne. So like as a
Yeah.
15-year-old, that is like the best thing, I didn't really,
Yeah.
and that from a young age, like I've traveled, I've been away, I've been used to that kind of thing,
Yeah.
And it's never really phased me that much. I just used to love it, and I think that early experience, it kind of gave me that hunger and thought, oh, I want to do this and I want to be actually competing and be up there. So having those experiences, and you do learn a lot at that age, and you're like taking it all in, and you're kind of
Yeah.
at first a bit like a rabbit in headlights, but then the next year, and you just start to get stronger, more confident, and then having those experiences, yeah, I think definitely helped me at a young age.
What was I've got a couple of questions here. I kept seeing short course and long course, but I was seeing like 800 short course, 800 long course. Like, they're both 800 meters. So what's the difference?
So short course means short course meters, which is in a 25-meter pool.
Okay, right. I
And
feel I feel stupid now. That
And
makes
long
sense.
course is no, it's a completely valid question. And long course is in a 50-meter pool. And
Yeah,
so people often swim quicker in a short course, so 25-meter pool, because there's more tumble turns. So you
yeah.
actually get more power off the wall. And so a lot of times a short course are quicker than the long course. Very
I
valid
was
question.
I was wondering when I was doing a bit of research. I was like, I'm going to sound stupid here, but right. I'm glad we've cleared that up now. I'm happy with that. What was that step up like for you, going from in the space of, I don't know, a year or so, you've gone from home to your second home in Swansea to Melbourne. Like, that's quite a big jump each time, especially for someone who won't have masses of life experience at 15, 16 years old. How did you find those jumps? And are you the sort of person who you would take that in your stride and it's just sponge, keep giving it to me? Or did you struggle with parts of it and being homesick or away? Or like, what was that like for you?
Yeah, it's weird because I don't think that would have worked for a lot of people, But it felt like the right time for me at 16 to move, because I felt like I was in a very small swimming club, and if I
Yeah,
was going to give swimming a go and see where it take me, I had to make a move.
yeah,
So it just wasn't viable for my family to move away. So yeah, decided to move. And I actually lived in a house with 3 other guys, which definitely wouldn't happen now. Like a 16-year-old girl living in a house, and like honestly, I used to get some stick, but it quite kind of made me quite thick-skinned, because I had
yeah,
to I had to be able to take it. And yeah, I think I was more of the sponge and just taking everything on and just
yeah,
trying to learn all the time. And like, yeah, I genuinely felt like it was just a huge opportunity that I couldn't miss. And trying to balance like college, going to Swansea College, doing A levels, and trying to train, and a big step up in training as well.
yeah,
And again, like, you're just aware of like coming from a small swimming club, and you're just used to going in and diving in a pool, swimming up and down. Well, you're now aware of like, you need to think about your nutrition, what I'm eating before and after, the
yeah.
stretching, the physio side of it, the gym side of it. So it was like soon realize how much it actually takes, and all the other things that you've got to do to try and help yourself improve. So it was the best move for me. And I think had it been a couple of years later, I don't think it'd have been the right time. I think it might have been too late. So I definitely think that was the right move, even though it was such a young age at the time.
It did, like, you know, I was looking at various things that you've done throughout your career, and one of the things that struck me, which again, you don't really think about it, I suppose, until you look at it, but the traveling and meeting new people, like their experiences that people still crave for now into their 30s and 40s, like that must have given you so much just as a person, as well as being maybe a more rounded athlete and don't know what the right word is, like I suppose being more open to ideas and changes and your routine and stuff like that. Like, what was that like traveling the world at that age?
It's weird because I think it's probably something that I've actually taken for granted quite a lot.
Yeah.
Because it just naturally happens, I guess. You get asked to go on training camps, you're going away, do competitions abroad. From a junior age, my European juniors, we went to Budapest and we went to Parma, and you're just going on training camps, you're going away quite a lot, and you kind of just take it in your stride, and you think that this is kind of just normal, that you get to go away and do all these cool things away. But when you look back and you're like, oh wow, like the places that I have been and the things I've seen is pretty special, and at the time, I think you're always chasing that next thing, like what's next competition, or striving for more, striving to be better, that you actually don't think about all the things that you're doing. And don't get me wrong, a lot of places I've been to, I've just seen the hotel, the swimming pool, like that's about all I've seen. But, a lot of places that I've been to, and, it's only when you sit and you think, wow, I've been there, I've been able to see that, I've been able to experience that, and all the friends that you kind of meet along the way around the world. It's pretty special, really, the experiences that you make and the things that you can learn along the way. And I definitely from a young age wouldn't have, sport has taken me to so many different places. I definitely wouldn't have had those experiences without sport. So I've been very fortunate with that, I think, to have those experiences.
Yeah, it does give you something away from just the winning and losing, definitely, if you can get to travel like that. I was looking at your career just coming up. So obviously 2006 was Melbourne, and obviously your first one, you went through to 2010 as well. But in between then, there was a couple of, I've got the Euro short course in Croatia, 2008, and then the World Aquatic Championships where you had the bronze, the first 4x200, and that was a record. So again, you're starting to climb the ladder, I suppose, if that's the right term. Were you close to GB squads at that stage then, or were you still at that Commonwealth level and competing for Wales and your club?
Yeah, it took me to when I was 18 to make it onto the GB senior team, and that was on a relay.
Yeah.
But
how does that work? Because I don't know swimming that well. So I know in football, you play for Man United, you do well, you get picked by England or Wales. Same for Cardiff Blues, get picked for Wales, right? It's quite a simple process. What's it in swimming? What's that like?
It is actually quite simple, or I think it's quite simple. So normally each year there'll be like a British Championships or a British Nationals or both. And often the teams are selected at the British Championships. So it's quite simple, like to be in the top one or two in your event, or in a relay, it would be like your top four, or maybe top 5 or 6. So there are like criteria. But you have to just perform at that one competition,
It's pressure, that is.
Yeah. So like each year there's the British Championships, and it qualifies you for either the Worlds, the Commonwealths, Europeans, or the Olympics, and people forget that it was like in 2016, I had 1 week, and that was where I had to perform at my best, and you don't get a second chance. Like if you've got an injury, or if you're not at your best that week, like you just miss out, and it is cutthroat, but I've been so used to that. And I said it to someone else in sport the other day, actually, because it's like in football or rugby, it's like you've got games all the time, and you've always got that next one coming up. Whereas like in swimming, in reality, you've got to be able to be at your best twice a year. You've got to be at your best at the British Championships to qualify you, and then to be at your best at, say, the World Champs or whatever. So you only have really 2 opportunities in the year to really perform well. You do obviously do competitions around that, but they're just not at the same level, and you don't rest and things.
Again, this might be a stupid question, but like people talk about being in form or out of form, with football, rugby, whatever. Do you find that with swimming then? You can feel like your turns are going well, and your stroke is smooth, and you feel like you're just in the groove. And then there's other times where you're like dragging the water back because you just don't feel right. Like, do you get that as well, where you're in form and out of form?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you get that more so in training. So sometimes training can just be going really well. You can be doing really good times and great in the gym. And then other times, like you'll go through weeks of training where it's not going well. You just can't put your finger on why, like,
Yeah,
I'm not training well. Why am I not performing well in the gym? You just can't put your finger on it. But in terms of competition, most of the time, it's like momentum. So it's like having competitions under your belt, training under your belt makes a big difference. But yeah, I feel like the form side of it is mainly the training side of it. But yeah, sometimes you just can have like weeks where training's just not going well, and it's hard to just put your finger on why.
yes, strange because again, like in team sports or a lot of other sports, you could not, you could potentially have lost, but have done really well in loads of other things and lost it by a point, or the other way around. You could have won, but actually played terribly, but still managed. Like with swimming, is it defined? Is it genuinely defined by just that end time in that place, or as you were younger, were you going into meets with the view to look a good meet for this particular one is getting out your heat and getting into the final, or hitting this time, knowing that you might not win it because you've never hit a winning time before for that particular event or whatever. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, so I think it is so individual, so unique. I think as I got towards my senior kind of years in the sport, you try and not focus as much on the time. And I try and say to
Okay.
people, like at the Olympics, like, yeah, we had like race plans where you go in for a certain time. But in the back of my mind at the Olympics, I'm not thinking, I want to go this time. I'm thinking about like, I need to race. I need to get my tactics right to get my hand on the wall as in the top three, you know, or to try and win a medal, or to try and get a certain place. And that does happen a lot. And then there are other competitions where you are trying to hit certain times because the time gets you a qualification for certain other things. So it is, I think, quite lucky in swimming that it is like a, you know, if you do great swim, you most of the time, if you've done it well, you'll have a great time at the end of it.
Yeah.
Whereas like in some other sports, I guess, you just might not go that same way, whereas we always have that feedback. But I think in some terms it can be quite harsh, you know, because if things are off, you got a big time on the board and you're like, oh god, like, you know,
Can't even hide from it.
yeah, you can't hide. Whereas like maybe in a sport where it's, you know, even like boxing and things, at times like I watch that and I'm like, at least in swimming it's quite simple, you either have a good time or you
Yeah,
do well, you know.
yeah,
Whereas like in other sports where it's actually down to human eye or whatever,
yeah,
you don't have that kind of instant feedback from a time. But I think there's pros and cons to both probably.
yeah. So 2010, then you're at the Commonwealths. When was that one? 2010.
That was in Delhi.
Delhi, that's it. Yeah, you'd obviously started smashing it by then. Like you have silver in the 200 meter, bronze. Was that in the 400 meter freestyle as well?
Yeah.
Like, did you? What was the feeling from 20, 2006, sorry, to 2010, where you've just got that 4 years experience? Like, did you feel more pressure because you'd been doing so much better, or did you feel less pressure because you'd already been through those emotions before, and now it was just, it's another meet, it's another race, it's another set of heats or whatever?
Yeah, I think I was actually felt like I was starting to get momentum, and I was actually more excited because I wanted to start performing individually and racing well. You know, I felt like I was just ready to kind of break onto that senior scene in my events. So it was actually, yeah, Delhi was a real funny competition. There was so many people with Delhi belly. A few funny different stories. The pool was often like green and loads of bugs in the pool.
Yeah.
You would try and not use the toilets at the competition pool because they weren't in the best condition. But it was, yeah, for me, I've got really good memories because it was like my kind of first breakout competition. So aside from all the Delhi belly and the upset stomachs and things like that, I've got quite good memories. And I think the more competitions I went to, the hungrier it made me to want to do more, do it again and again, really.
Did you go with expectations to that Commonwealth in terms of placing medal, gold, silver, bronze, or again was it a case of you kind of knew where you sat roughly, and let's just go for what we can?
Yeah, I think I went into the final in my first event, the 200, which was like fifth or sixth. And I managed to come away with a silver. I had like a really good last 50. And so I think I kind of gone into it. Every competition you go into, you want to be at your best and you want to be winning medals, really.
Yeah.
So that was always in the back of my mind, but I wouldn't say it was like an expectation where it was like, oh, she could win some medals here, she could. It wasn't like a guaranteed, but it was like, oh, if like I had a good swim, then it was something that was definitely in like my reach, if that makes sense.
How do you, as a person, how do you deal with the highs of placing and getting a medal like that? I'd be one of those people that I'd go for gold after. You wouldn't see me for a week. I'd probably be out celebrating. I'm one of those, like, I tend to, the highs hit me really high, but then the lows hit me really low as well. Like,
Yeah.
what sort of person are you with that?
Well, immediately after, I always struggled to sleep. Like I'm always just
Yeah,
bouncing off the walls, like thinking, oh, because it is such like a high and such great feeling. But I spoke about it quite a bit actually. But in sport, it's like you're always searching for the next thing. It's like always you get back from a competition. And instead of really sitting back and actually thinking, oh, like what have I just been through the whole experience? You're thinking, what's next? I've got to be training for the British Championships or the next competition or the next competition.
yeah,
So it's very rare that you actually get that time to kind of reflect and have those. I did struggle a lot after Rio, that kind of come
yeah.
down, but I think that was probably just because it was the biggest and it was something that I was aiming for so long. But in terms of the other competitions, I guess they all felt like they were driven towards the Olympics, or that I was
Yeah.
moving on to the next competition to try and be at my best, that was going to help me to go on to the Olympics, if that makes sense.
Were you in the training program then of going for 2012? Because I know obviously you went to 2016, but what happened with 2012 then? I don't mean to be rude here, but how come that didn't happen? Like, what was the story around that?
Yeah, it's difficult because again, teams picked that year, like normally four
Yeah,
or 5 months out from the Olympics. And like I guess I was in the kind of realms that should have qualified. I went to the World Championships in 2011 and qualified for a few events. So I should have really been in that kind of realms of trying to go. The year before I found out I had glandular fever. So yeah, it was just a really difficult time, trying to train and not being well. I was getting tonsillitis every 2 or 3 weeks. And
oh, savage.
yeah, I think, in sport, injuries and illnesses, it's like it is part of the parcel, but well, with glandular fever, it's like it's not like I could take some antibiotics or I'd feel better in a few weeks. It was like they were saying to the doctor, saying to me, some people it will take like a few years or a couple of years to
Yeah,
get back to feeling normal. And it's like, again, having that like no end goal or not knowing when I would feel better, I think that's what made it even worse.
yeah,
So I did actually achieve the qualifying time to go to London, but I came fourth and they only took the top two. And I just was off, I just wasn't performing at my best. In 2011, I was racing well, I was racing at my best. And then 2012, I was just off. And it was just like, being at competitions and especially like the home Olympics, it was like something I'd thought of for a long time. It was that everyone was talking about, like the media and everyone was talking about the home Olympics, and
yeah,
to not be a part of that, to not go when you're seeing your teammates go, you're seeing everyone's so excited to have an Olympics in London, and to know that you didn't qualify, you didn't make it. I wasn't good enough. Obviously I did have glandular fever, but it's no excuses. Like I just wasn't good enough and I wasn't there. So that was probably one of the toughest parts of my career. It's like watching a home Olympics. I'm a huge sports fan, but when you're sat at home and you're watching swimming on the TV, it was your dream to be a part of it, it's really tough to kind of swallow and think, oh, like, can I still do this?
how do you deal with that, like mentally, and how do you not get caught in the rut of feeling sorry for yourself, and days then lead into weeks and into months, and it affects future training and future events and stuff? How do you pull yourself out of that?
It's a difficult one to say, to be honest, because I had a few months where I just struggled massively. I
Yeah,
didn't think I was going to carry on with it. I really questioned whether I still wanted to do it. And it is hard, you know, when you give everything and you don't get the results. It happens in all kinds of life. But
Do you get support at that moment? Because again, I don't know, so I'll make an assumption here, but you're not picked. Obviously, the support team then is focusing on its main athletes who are going to the Olympics. Now, I'm not saying you could be left behind, but you're not the priority for the next month, 2 months. Did you get support, or was it more family, friends, and that's tough for someone to go through? For someone to go through, like.
Yeah, I think it was more support from family and friends, to be honest. And
Yeah.
it's like the repercussions that happen, you know, I didn't qualify to make the team. So you get taken off funding, which means like you can't see like physios, you're not going on training camps with the rest of the team. You're like sat at home training. And while you're seeing everyone else go off to different competitions abroad, like in Europe, and you're sat at home, and it's like, it's not just like, oh, I missed out on the Olympics. It's all the things like getting funding, having to support like training and things, and not being able to see the physio. You're no longer their priority. They're not interested, you know, because they don't feel like you can help them in that way. So that
seems so cutthroat. Like you've given so much, and just a few milliseconds or whatever, and you're not on the scrap heap because you've obviously come back then and absolutely smashed it. But like, how are you like? Are you earning money? Are you having to work as well then? Like if your funding gets cut and stuff? I don't know how any of that works.
Yeah, I had a bit of support from Swim Wales. So again, very lucky to have had that support. But I was always quite, you know, with money saved up. So I just managed to support myself. And it was the year after then that I had like a real break. And once I got in the water, once I decided I was going to give it a go to try and go for Rio. And again, Olympics, it's every 4 years. So it's like, you're not just thinking, oh, I've got another year or I've got this. You've got to think 4 years is when I want to.
Such a commitment.
So yeah, when I got back in, it did change me. I was changed as a person. And I was more cutthroat. I was ruthless, you know, with my training, throwing myself into like everything, doing extra, like not just settling. Like if I would have, like it's quite a swimming term, like one bad rep, or like if I didn't swim that well in the session, I'd carry on, you know, until I did well. And I just kind of became very ruthless with my training, that I wasn't just going to accept like average training. I wanted to be better. I wanted to be quicker, and I didn't want to be sat at home watching the Olympics on the TV again. I didn't want that to happen. So I guess it did change me, but in a way for my training, it made me push me on to bigger things. It was like finding like another gear that I could push on to. But then it did, on the other hand, make me a bit a perfectionist, you know, always searching for more, to be better, quicker, stronger, faster, and like not always like celebrating the small wins. Does that make sense? Always to be better.
From what you're telling me, like I can imagine it's very emotionally draining at times, and the pressure, the need to improve, because you can't, like, you know, again, the sports I'm used to, you can see improve, you know, in the gym or whatever, like you need to be milliseconds make a difference. Like that's a high pressure situation every time you get in the pool, every time you're training, competing. Like what do you do away from all of that when you get home? What do you like to do? What relaxes your mind? What resets you to the next day? You're mentally fresh as well as a bit physically fresh.
Yeah, it's difficult because in a day-to-day training, you're up in the morning and you go to the pool, you're doing half an hour, 30 minutes before, like pre-pool mobility. You swim for 2 to 2.5 hours, then you're back out into the gym. Then I get home, and then from then, like it's like eating, making the most of like the food. Then I come back, I'd have a nap. I needed a nap every single day from training because I was just so wiped out. And the ability to sleep, like head on the pillow, I'd be out of it, you know, every nap. I just don't have that anymore, you know. I can't pick me up. I don't nap. No, don't really nap anymore. So I used to love a nap, and then back is food, and then back to the pool for training again. So it's like you kind of spend most of your time is revolved around like making yourself better for the next training session, you know. But away from it, it's probably just really boring things, you know, like watching TV series.
What series are you watching at the moment?
What series am I watching at the minute? I'm actually watching Handmaid's Tale. It's
I've not seen that.
it's very strange. It's honestly one of the weirdest things I've watched. But yeah, it's kind of like a bit so weird that you kind of just keep watching. But yeah, I like always enjoy like watching TV stuff. And the year before Rio, I actually bought a house and it like needed
Yeah,
complete renovation. And
class.
so it was actually quite nice, like having a bit of focus on like, oh, what can I do to improve the house, and having a
Yeah,
focus
yeah,
on like doing it. Maybe not the best idea the year before the Olympics, buying a house that needs complete renovation, but it actually gave me a bit of focus, and it was like my thoughts were like, oh, what can I do to the kitchen, or what
yeah,
colour
yeah.
carpet do I want? So that gave me quite a lot of focus as well when yeah, but aside from that, I guess like seeing friends, family, social side of it,
Yeah.
that was all really, is not much time to do a lot else, and again, you're away for training camps. You could be away for 6 weeks on a training camp, not seeing friends, family, and you're kind of just in this bubble of training and just to strive to like be at your best at the competitions. It's a bit of a crazy world, really.
Mad, I can't imagine what that's like. I am 2 seconds. My door has just gone, and my missus is asleep because she got nights tonight.
Oh, of course.
So let me just 2 seconds.
Oh my god.
With the Honest Athletes logo on and without it saying link in bio. And they also haven't posted anything either. So I don't know really. What do you think? I've just, funny enough, had an email with the amended image. They've put the Honest Athletes logo on, but not link in bio. Oh, sorry about that.
It's okay.
Fucking pain in the ass. Amazon, mate. It's got to stop spending. Jesus Christ.
So easy though, just click. It's like it's here.
I like you. I moved house, like I said, last summer, and it was we're renting, but it's unfurnished. So kitting out a house from scratch, you're just like, right, we need that. It's another 12 quid. That's another 50 quid. That's another 6 quid. It just fucking builds up. I forget about it then, and then it turns up. But yeah, sorry about that. I'd love to get into sort of that period then leading up to Rio. You had the 2014 Commonwealth Games where you had a gold in the 800 metre. John, before we get into all that, you've swam 200, 400, 800. Am I right saying there's a 1500 as well?
Yeah, I used to swim 1500 too.
Like in athletics, is it 1 to 400 is classed as a sprint, or like 60 to 400 is classed as a sprint? What are the different classes in swimming, and what were your favourites? Because you've got medals in very like 200, 400, and 800. So they're very different. Like 8 minutes of swimming and 2 minutes of swimming are very different things. Like.
Yeah, so I was classed as like a distance swimmer. So
Yeah.
my main events were like 400 and 800, sometimes a 1500, but I don't. It's just a bit too long for me.
I watched you 800. I watched you 400 and 800 from the Olympics, and I knew the results, but I was still like nervous and like, oh god, like. But then I looked at the time and I was like, 8 minutes of fucking swimming. Gee, I could not. Like, I went to the Olympic pool a while back now, a good few years ago, right, with one of my mates who was like training to do like a triathlon, and it's 50-meter pool, right? So I'm doing one length, which is taking me about a minute, and then I'm having a rest for a minute, and then I'm doing another length. I did about 10 lengths, right, in 20 minutes. I was fucking blowing. But I could play a game of rugby league. I could do box. I could do a 10K run slowly, but I can do one. Like swimming, mate, is the hardest fucking thing I've ever done. Like proper swimming, trying to breathe every second stroke or third. Like, oh fuck.
It's so technical, I take it for granted that swimming is actually such a technical sport.
Yeah.
And if you're not taught those kind of fundamental things when you're younger, like it is so tough. But But yeah, it is tough, you know, especially like it's not natural to be in water, like to have your head underwater and to try and breathe. Like a lot of people struggle with their breathing. But to me, it's just like I'm a lot more natural, like in the water. Like even when I go for a run, I always get a stitch, and I'm convinced it's because I'm so used to my breathing pattern from swimming being like in water and being able to control it that way that I actually don't know how to breathe when I'm running.
And your body's obviously like flatlined as you're swimming, apart from like your feet and arms. But whereas you're running, you're up and down, so it's probably like not used to the.
Yeah, I didn't think of it like that. Maybe it's yeah, I've been used to being on like in streamline position the whole time. I'm not used to being on land.
What do you think about when you're swimming for that long? Like, I'm one of those people, I need music when I'm training. Like,
Yeah.
I'm in the gym, I've got music blasting, I'm on the watt bike, I've got music going, or I'm watching Netflix or fucking whatever. Like, 15 minutes of swimming for me is like probably like an hour of running, right? I couldn't do it without something in my ears. How do you do? What are you thinking about?
The thing is, in training, like my old coach especially, he would be blasting, like he loves like Ibiza house music, so it would be like blasting on poolside while we're swimming, which is great. But obviously you don't have that much time when you're on the side because most of the time you're swimming up and down.
Yeah.
But you know, you'd like sing to yourself, you like think of like, oh, what do I need to get from the shops? You think of the most random things, but then in competitions, like there's never been a time where I'm like, because you're always aware of what's going on, especially in the distance events. It's like you can see people, you're aware of it. So you're trying to do your tactics and swim your race. So there is always things to think about. Whereas in training, like you're just thinking about like, what am I going to watch? What am I going to cook for dinner tonight? What am I going to watch on TV? All those kinds of random things you're thinking about.
It's mad. Like it always baffles me. That does. Talk to me about then. Commonwealth in Glasgow, you had a gold, you had a silver, and then that build up to Rio where you absolutely smashed it. And if it wasn't for that, if the American girl, her name escapes me now, it begins with L, doesn't it?
Katie Ledecky, yeah.
She must have had like fins or something, pal. The one race must be in the 800. She was fucking gone.
Yeah.
Like, do you watch people and like base yourself off them almost, like if you're neck and neck, and can you see that, or is it just splashing, you can't really see where they are?
You can definitely see where people are, and you know, I was in one of those events where I just happened to be racing like the best, most people would say she's the best female swimmer of all time, and the records that she's broken, the times that she's gone, like she's just so much quicker than any other female ever, and she just happens to be in the Olympics that I'm competing. So it's just, you know, just one of them things you just have to accept and couldn't control it, you know. So and people find it mad, but like mine and my coach, our goal was to win 2 silver medals. Our best result was to win 2 silver medals at the Olympics. So like when you're going into Olympics, most people would think, oh, I was going for the gold medal. But when someone is so quick and so good and broken like every world record, like in the free distance freestyle events by a huge margin, it would have been unrealistic of me to think that I can go into an Olympics and I can drop like time that she's done and that I can perform at that level, because I guess it's just unrealistic. Whereas to go there and to aim for 2 silver medals, to win 2 silver medals was like for me the best achievement that I could have done.
Does that put more pressure on you because you're going for one of 2 places, or less pressure because you haven't got to worry about being the best, just in that top 2?
I didn't really see it as that, to be honest. I saw it as being at my best, and I was going there to try and win 2 medals. And it was just about performing at my best and doing the best race plan. I didn't really think of it as like, oh, there's not as many medals or whatever or placings. It was just about going there to do my best and like hope that my best was good enough to win 2 medals, really.
You're in Rio, you stood on the is it a board that you're stood on at the beginning?
We call it a block.
A block, right? So you're on the starting blocks, right? Cool, got you. So you're on the block, goggles on, swimming cap is on, crowd's going fucking berserk, right? How do you say, you know, for like the 800, how would you not start off going at your 400 pace? How do you calm it down and relax so that you've got it in the tank to finish strong? And what are you thinking just before the gun goes and you're off? Like, what goes through your head Is it nerves? Are you calm? What will be will be. Like, what's that feeling?
I was always like nervous. I was always nervous, but to me, it wasn't like sometimes some people see nerves and they're like, oh, like someone that's like keeled over or whatever. Like for me, nerves was like that kind of bit shaky, like a bit on edge, like the excitement, the adrenaline.
Yeah,
And I saw nerves as like, I'm just ready to race. I'm excited. And like, I guess a bit anxious to swim because you wanted it to go well and you've worked so hard for it. But standing on the blocks, like it's just trying to remember all the things that have gone really well, think of like all the positive things and things you've done well in training that are going to make sure that you're at your best. And at the end of the day, like I can only do my best. And at times like you are so hard on yourself, but you can only do the best you can do. And yeah, like stepping on the blocks and diving in, it was just about like trying to stay as relaxed as possible, with your breathing. And you know what, we've trained, and I've swam an 800 or a 400 like so many times. I would love to know the number. I don't actually know the number, but it's got to be up there near 100 or more. The amount of time. So I've swam it a lot. And so you get to know the events, and I've trained for it. That's all I've been training for, thinking about, visualizing. I knew exactly what I was doing. But then you do see some people that go into those races and they forget everything that they've ever learned in their whole sporting careers, and it all goes out the window,
I can't imagine what that feeling's like. And again, how do you know that you're swimming the right time for what you want to achieve? Because, like I said, the American girl, she'd almost, a body ahead and then two body ahead, three bodies ahead, and she's next to you in the lane. So you can't pace yourself off her. Or how do you do that so you're not slamming it and you're fucked for the last 100, but you're not too slow that you're not in the race either?
So you kind of like in training, we're always practicing. So we do like race pace. So like we're always locking into that pace in training. So you get to know what it feels like, and like how quick your arms are going. It's called your stroke rate. So you get to know that. So I've practiced that like hundreds and hundreds of times in training to know what it feels like. And obviously in a competition, it does feel a bit different. But, it's about focusing on your lane. Like you've got no one that can affect it apart from you. You're in control of it. And it's so tactical, the distance events, like who makes a move and being aware of what everyone else is doing, but being in control of your race as well. I tried to not focus too much on everyone else. I tried to focus on what I was, my pacing and what I was doing. Because I think if you get too wrapped up in what everyone else is doing, it affects what you're actually doing. So I think that was important.
And what's it like when you've got to do two disciplines at one event? So again, like Rio, it's the biggest stage. You've been training for this now for probably 6-7 years rather than just a 4-year cycle. You've done, what was first? Was it the 400 first?
400 was first, yeah.
So 400 first, you've won your silver medal, you've stood on the podium. What's that feeling like? And then once that feeling's gone and it's a day or two later, how do you manage to pick yourself up emotionally and not be drained of energy to go again for the 800?
Yeah, it was quite a funny one in Rio because we actually had our finals. Our finals started at 10 p.m. because of the US, like the American TV rights.
Okay.
So normally like the finals would maybe be 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. and you'd be back and you can get dinner and all that kind of stuff. Whereas we had to adjust our whole like timings for 10 p.m. finals. I think the heats were at 1 p.m., which they're normally at like 9 or 10 a.m. So they're quite early. So we had to completely adjust like our schedules. But winning that first...
That's mad that you have to do the heats on the same day then as the actual event. That's like, I don't know, like a footballer having to train in the morning and play in the night.
Yeah, so it's like in the 400 it was the same day, but in the 800 you do actually you race the day after. So the final.
Okay, right.
So they just do that with the distance event. You get an extra like 24 hours to recover.
Yeah.
But it's funny because the 400, like I was racing at maybe 11:30 at night. By the time I'd got back, warmed down, obviously ceremony, all that kind of stuff, come back, see my coach, and do have a drugs test. So by the time I actually got back to the athletes village, it was like probably 1:30, 2 in the morning, right? And so I go and like get food from the dining hall, and I'm like sat and I've like just like achieved my dreams of like winning a silver medal at the Olympics. I'm sat on my own, right? Because like no one's around. I'm sat like eating food, like what just happened, you know? Get back to the apartment, everyone's asleep. It's like you can't even like go and like have a great time, because I knew I had my race like in a few days' time. So it's like that kind of like high moment. It was just like not a letdown, because obviously, of course, it was such an incredible moment, but so I couldn't even really celebrate it. There was no one. I could have food with no one. I was sat eating dinner on my own at 2 a.m. I guess you speak to family and stuff on the phone, but like it was just such a weird feeling, because you're like, it's 2 a.m. and like no one's awake, and like you just want to. But I obviously had my event coming up the following few days, so but that time in between was difficult, because I don't know, I was always prone, like after a competition I'd get quite unwell. It's like my body was like just wanting to shut down after all.
Shattered probably.
So I actually started to feel a bit unwell before my 800. So I don't know, just a bit of a cold, you know, nose, sore throat, that kind of stuff. So it was a bit funny, like I had to change my mindset, because I was like, oh, I'm not feeling great, but I still need to try and like get on the podium. Well, I still want to be on the podium and racing at my best again. So yeah, it was a funny time really, because it was such a different time, you know, 2 a.m. coming back. And again, like it was the same with the 800. I got back 2 a.m. And I'd finished competing at this point. So it was like, instead of thinking about getting all the right foods in, it was like, get the pizza, get the ice cream. Unfortunately, no drink in the village.
Is there not?
No, I don't think so. No, people have to bring them in.
Okay.
And so because this swimming was still on, so it was mainly just like pizza, ice cream, anything I could get my hands on that was like a bit like bad for me. Yeah. And then obviously after that, when all the swimming's over, then you can kind of let your hair down a bit and enjoy it. But
do you have like all the swimming's done? What's like athletics is last, isn't it? Normally, is that right?
Yeah, it's quite.
I think so.
Yeah, swimming is the first week. Yeah.
Do you, all the swimmers from all the countries, get together and have a bit of a blowout, or is it very much like GB keeps with GB and might say hello to France if you see each other a lot? But like, is it tribal, or do you just all get in like in rugby? You would all just get in the middle, probably get naked, fucking let's go, right? What's it like in swimming?
Yeah, everyone just lets loose, you know, and like swimmers have quite a bad reputation actually. I think because the swimming is always done like one of the first sports to be done. So they're always seen, and because swimmers like it's so intense for like all year.
Yeah.
Where you don't really have that blowout. Whereas like, it's like at the end of like a competition, like everyone just goes nuts, you know. They just love it, you know, and everyone just gets like, and everyone gets on, you know, at the end of the day it's so everyone just has a great time and lets loose.
How long do you stay for after then, before you've got to come home? Did you manage to watch any of the Olympics or?
Yeah, stay till the end. So stay to the very end. Went to the athletics a couple of times, the boxing.
Brilliant.
What else did I go and watch? The cycling. So it's like good because like, I just love watching all sports.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
So I was just trying to get my hands on to go to any other sport, you know, just to try and experience it, because it's not very often you can have that experience really to go and watch it.
That's kind. And you know, with training, obviously you're in the pool and in the gym a lot. But did you do any other forms of training? Like, would you be on the bike a lot or anything like that, or would it purely be sort of gym based, mobility based, and obviously in the pool?
It was mainly like swim. So I would swim like 75 kilometers a week, and so like because you're doing so much swimming, and I'd do the gym 3 times a week, and then on top of that, it's like physio, your stretching, your mobility, but everything is geared towards helping you be the best swimmer. Yeah. So you kind of are so forged to be a swimmer. It's like to do other things. It's like a lot of swimmers struggle with like shin splints or like injuries when they do other sports because their bodies are not used to it. So we didn't really do much else really because swimming just used to take up so much time.
It's that's a phenomenal amount, 75k a week. Just fucking hell, I couldn't do that. But then I'm not trying to be an Olympic swimmer either, so there we are. What was it like afterwards? Again, you mentioned like just now, you said about sometimes after competitions you can feel a bit ill, and after 2012 when you didn't make it, you were really down and found that hard. Because am I right in saying you retired in 2018?
Yeah.
So you got 2 years there. You know, there's an Olympics, obviously 2020 coming up. Like, what was the mindset and thought process to not go through to Tokyo, which is obviously now moved to this year? Like, what was that roller coaster of emotions like, and how did you come to that decision then to tap that on the head?
It was difficult because I think the hardest thing I found was that I'd been so kind of fixated and like focused on Rio. Like it was all like, especially after missing out in 2012, like it was all I was thinking about: Rio, the Olympics. Da, 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 da. So then when I came back, and yeah, like it was amazing. Like you get to see people and get all these different experiences and
Yeah,
events and go and do really fun things. And
yeah,
then when you actually get back to normality and you're like, oh, like what's next? Like it's over.
yeah, yeah,
And I think that's what hit me like the hardest really, is like that I just, all I'd thought about, it was like that was it. And it was like I couldn't see past it. So yeah, I think I didn't feel like I was completely done with the sport. I still felt like I had more to give. I decided to try open water a go,
yeah,
which is like a 10 kilometer, like the marathon swim. So I wanted to give that a go. But yeah, it was a decision. Like I just, it was tough. I found it very tough to refocus after Rio and still have that same like motivation and drive.
yeah,
And like I hold my hands, like it's when you see other athletes that go on Olympics after Olympics and winning medals at like back to
yeah.
back, it's just like it's so impressive to hold that motivation like year on year on year. But it was tough, you know. It took me to quite a dark place, I think, because I couldn't really see past it, and it was like, well, it's gone. And I remember on like the GB teams after, they said to us, we're not allowed to say the R word, which is like Rio. We weren't allowed to like mention Rio.
Done,
It was like,
gone. See
it's
you
done.
later.
We're on to the next one now. And that like realization that like, it felt like it was like, I don't know, it's such in the back of my mind and everything that I'd ever wanted, that it was just over and like people weren't even bothered, you know? And it's not that you do it for everyone else, but it's like to not even be able to talk about it or to say the word. It's
Yeah, yeah.
a bit rough, you know?
It's the biggest. Oh, I don't know, but it feels like it would be up there with the biggest things
Yeah.
to ever happen in your life. Only a select number of people become Olympians, let alone finalists, let alone place and actually earn a medal. Like, why shouldn't you celebrate that and talk about those memories with
Yeah.
your friends? And they're the things that, if I don't play rugby anymore, but when I go to the gym or whatever, I'm like, oh, do you remember that time that we did this or that, or fucking, I don't know, stupid shit. And if you can't talk about it, like, that's the fun part of why you do what you do, I
Yeah.
suppose.
Yeah, so it was difficult and it did take me to a tough time, you know. It was like, I guess, lacking the purpose, lacking the identity, again finding all those kind of other things. It's like when that was taken away and like it's done, what else is there? So I did try open water. I really did want to give it a go, but it just felt like I'd got to the stage. I was 28 and I retired at the end of 2018, and I felt like I'd achieved everything I'd wanted to in the sport, and it felt like the right time to see myself go on for another well, it would have been 3 years now, and to still maintain that same motivation. I think that would have been tough for me. And as you get older, you start to think like missing best friends' weddings and missing out
Yeah.
on like hen dos and like things that are just like normal
Yeah.
things. And it sounds
Yeah.
like quite silly, but like you do sacrifice. Well, people say sacrifice or whatever, but you do say no to a lot of things because
You
you're
must do, yeah.
on that journey of sport, and that's what happens, when you're driven towards like a goal and something in sport, you have to say no to a lot of things. But it got to that stage where I felt like I'd achieved everything I'd wanted to, and I started to think that there were actually other things that were as important and things that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so it was a difficult decision, but at the same time, it felt like the one at the right time. And being in control of that decision myself, I think made it a lot easier. And there was no
Yeah.
injuries or illness or anything else. It just felt like the right time to be like, I'm done. So I
Do
think,
you
yeah.
do you wish that you had I phrase this in the right way? Do you wish that you had done that after Rio, looking back? Because 2 years in, you were halfway to another Olympic cycle, or are you happy that you still gave it a go for another year, 18 months, 2 years, but then it just felt wrong, like that was the time? Like, did you feel like you wasted 2 years after Rio, or not?
No, I think for me it was actually a good time for me to actually try out open water swimming. And
Yeah,
I think if I had have just stopped after Rio, I'd have maybe thought, oh, like would I have gone on to do other things or whatever? And I think to try open water, where it was something I'd wanted to try for so long, and also like I was 25 in Rio, which is seen as like older end in swimming, but
Is
I
it?
still felt like, yeah, I still felt like I had a bit more in me.
Yeah.
Turns out I didn't quite like have the motivation and same kind of drive,
Yeah.
but it was. I don't regret it looking back. I think I needed to come to that decision myself, and it didn't feel like
Yeah.
the right time after Rio. So it felt like the right time when I made the decision.
And again, like, it must be a factory of athletes coming through that GB system that if one goes, there is another one waiting to take the place. So for them, whilst it's a massive loss losing their talent, there is someone there to just backfill that. And like, do you get support after, whether it's like with like mental health and stuff like that? Because you see it so many times when people retire from football, rugby, sports, whatever, and they have that dip there and they struggle. Whether they talk about it or not is different, but in football, for example, loads of people then get divorced and bankrupt within 2 or 3 years of finishing playing because they can't handle the outside life. Like, is there that support there for you guys after?
Do I think there's support for athletes retiring? No, like there's not enough being done, in my
Yeah.
opinion, for athletes that have walked away from sports, been so used to like such structure and routine, and I don't feel like enough is done. Like, no, there's no support, and to the point, it's like not having like an email or a letter to say thanks or well done for your career or anything. It's difficult not receiving, like well done or
Yeah.
thanks for everything, when you've dedicated your life to a sport. But at the end of the
Yeah.
day, like, you don't do it for anyone else, you do it for yourself and for your family and things like that. But do I think more could be done for those athletes? Of course, because I was very lucky that it took me a bit of time to get into the real world and like to find my feet, but I was very lucky with the people I had around me to kind of guide me in certain directions and to have some support from different people. But it's tough, and especially going from such a kind of, I don't know, a restricted lifestyle, or where I guess
It's so routine, isn't it?
routine, yeah, to then
Yeah.
be in control of your own routine and not really going from being able to have late nights, enjoy a drink, to then being able to do it. And as I said, it's like
Yeah.
you have this quite like addictive personality where you like want to do
Yeah.
things and things like that, and to go out and like enjoy having a drink and a good time. But I can see why it can go badly for some people, and I do think more needs to be done and more support needs to be out there. But it's a bit crazy because you're just so used to that lifestyle. And someone said to
Yeah.
me the other day, actually, they said it's not like you walk away from sport with like a degree of the sport, or like you have that
Yeah.
qualification, and it's like you walk away and you don't really have that support. And it's like, again, people applying for jobs, and like it's like, you haven't got experience, you're 28 or whatever, and you haven't got experience in that things. And it's like, well, like I'm 28, but I've never worked. I've done a bit of work here and there, but I don't have experience in certain fields. And a lot of people do struggle with that. So I think a bit more support would go a long way, I think.
Ironically, you've probably got the mindset though over lots of other people who might have that experience in working in particular fields of drive, determination, getting up, hard work, learning, being coachable, all the assets that actually, when you look at someone, you want to employ them. They're the assets you want them. All the turning up on time, 100%. All the things that are free, you have got in abundance, I would imagine, because you couldn't be a professional athlete, let alone an elite level Olympian, if you didn't have those. So it's weird. I understand what you're saying, but it's weird. Like,
yeah, I've always said it, like, especially with swimming, if I saw someone that had applied for a job that was involved in swimming or even sport, it's like you just know how much dedication and how much time they would have taken them,
yeah,
and how driven they would have been. So I think it would have always seen as a plus side for me. But I just know that in certain areas where you do need that experience, and like often I know a lot of athletes that have like applied for things, it's taken them months and months to like get a look into, even get interviews for jobs, because they don't have experience in that field.
it's mad. Like, it's weird. Luckily, though, I suppose luckily, not luckily, fortunately, you're paving your own career now and doing your own thing. What's the future hold then? You've got Swim with Jazz, you're doing the podcast, you're spinning plates with a few different things. What's the future look like?
Oh, what does the future look like? Hopefully outside and like we can actually do things soon.
Yeah.
No, I think for me, I guess when you step away from sport, your mindset does change, and finding a new identity, I guess, instead of just being Jazz the swimmer, it's about what things do I enjoy? What do I like doing? What makes me happy as like a person, and enjoyment and fulfillment in life. And I've gone through a bit of a full circle. And I think for me now, it's all about the experience and the people I share it with. And like, I love getting outside in like nature and like outside going for a sea swim, like even when it's freezing cold. And those kind of experiences now, and cycling London to Paris, that was one of the most incredible experiences ever, for blood cancer charity. So I get a lot more fulfillment from other different things. And the work wise, I do like to do loads of different things, and mix it up. And I think one thing that this year has taught me is to be adaptable and to be able to make the most of the time that we have, and try and make the most of it and do different things and spread your wings a bit wide, so you can just be adaptable to work in different situations. So yeah, I think the future, I would love to obviously still be involved in sport. It's a passion of mine to get people moving, get people active, and to help people. I find I get so much fulfillment, and it's a passion of mine to really be able to help and make a difference. And that's whether in swimming, obviously, whether it's someone that has a fear of the water and getting them swimming, and seeing people like smile and happy in the water really makes me happy. But just in general, and in exercise and sport, and the positive impact that it can have on so many people's lives, I think is just so special. So yeah, just to be able to keep doing that, keep doing what I'm doing, and just take every opportunity and experience. Normally I love traveling and seeing different places and swimming around the world, but obviously that's on hold for now. But I love exploring and finding new places, but it's definitely made me explore, I think, more places around the UK last year, so that was quite special. But yeah, just see what happens. I'm very much a kind of go with it kind of person, and just see where it takes me. And I think that's where the kind of personality that I am, and it's just exciting that you just never know. And just looking forward to different opportunities and experiences that are to come, really. Sorry,
I love it.
Waffled on.
No. Sorry, you can breathe now. I love it. I love it when, because we don't, for people who are listening, we don't know each other. We've got a mutual friend, Alex Donovan, who did an episode before. But I love the mindset. I love your drive and determination. I can see the passion just as you're talking. So I've got no doubt that whatever it is you end up doing, and if it's Swim with Jazz and that becomes even bigger and better, like, it's going to be a success, because that's the type of person you are, and that's the drive you've got, and that's the impression I'm getting from you. Like, I'm not one to normally blow smoke up people's asses, but I say how it is, but I can see that in you as you're talking. Like, you are genuinely passionate about it. So I think, I'm looking forward to see what happens and the successes that you'll build outside of. And if anyone says you haven't got the experience, show me 2 medals and tell them to fuck off. What are you gonna do?
I feel like people actually think that you like carry medals like around like in my back pocket, And like, where are your medals? I'm like, I actually have no idea where they are. Like, I honestly, I just have no idea.
I'd be wearing mine just in a pair of budgie smugglers all day.
Imagine.
I do that anyway. I don't need a medal, That's what I rock around in anyway. Not a great sight. Hey, look, I want to say a massive thanks. Big thanks to Tiny Rebel Brewery, because they give us a couple of beers every episode. So always grateful having a little midweek beer. Big thanks to everyone that subscribes, downloads, rates and reviews. It's really appreciated. Keep giving us feedback, letting us know who you want us to talk to. Check out the website, should be live when this goes live, which will be catflapchats.com, and there'll be merch and sponsors on there. And check it out and tell me if it's any good or if it's absolute crap, and I'll listen either way. Don't worry about it. Jazz, huge thank you. I love that. That was brilliant. Love to see your passion, your desire, the mindset it takes. Like, I feel like I know swimming a little bit better now, and what it takes to become good, let alone that elite level operator who's winning silver Olympic medals. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on. I've really enjoyed it.
Well, just quickly before we go, where can people find you? Where can people find your podcast? What are your social channels?
Yep. So social media, just at Jazz Carlin, and Swim with Jazz, swimwithjazz.co.uk. That's where my online coaching platform, and our podcast, The Honest Athletes. We kind of talk a lot about swimming, but all our kind of experiences through sport, and we've got a few guests on, which is quite exciting in different sports as well. So just drawing back on a few experiences. So yeah, at Jazz Carlin and The Honest Athletes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Good luck in the future. I'm sure we'll cross paths again at some point. Take care, and absolutely loved having you on.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it.